Welcome to the month of June, 30 days all about gin. Shining a spotlight on craft-made Canadian. Fun facts and proper tastings, live cocktails Friday afternoons. Discover 14 different brands and be influenced by me. Some for roll. That's right, I'm a song for roll.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to day 2 of June, my 30-day salute to gin. See, yesterday I kicked things off with a welcome video post where I outlined the agenda and the flow of my month of June, as well as I provided a little historical background on what gin is and, well, essentially how it came to be. Now, if you did miss that post, I encourage you to check out my social media feeds and give it a watch. You can easily find it on my @SomForAll Facebook, YouTube, and or Twitter accounts. Now this year, June 2021, is going to have a huge spotlight on Canadian-made gin. You see, with the pandemic and lingering effects still abounding, it's now more important than ever to not only drink, but to love and to support local. And that rings very true with our Canadian-made gins. And yes, folks, there's lots of top-notch craft gin being made up here in the Great White North, as we'll soon find out. And while I'm very humbled, proud, and very excited to talk about the 14 Canuck gins I have, I thought first we would spend a little time talking about the 4, let's call it traditional styles of gin out there. Those 4 styles being London Dry, Plymouth, Old Tom, and slow gins. Now, due to product availability, the 4 examples that I have are indeed from across the pond, but again, don't despair, the all-Canadian lineup of gin is going to start on June 7th. So today, I'm going to quickly tackle the 2 styles in front of me here, London Dry and Plymouth. However, before we begin, as gin is indeed an adult beverage, I do need to ask that if there's anyone out there who's tuned in who is not yet of legal age where they live to be able to purchase, to consume, to handle alcohol, if you can't do any of that, then now is the time for you to sign off. All right, so London Dry. Now, it may come as a surprise to some of you that the words on the bottle indicate a style of production and present day actually have nothing at all to do with the city of London itself. When we see London Dry in a bottle, we can expect, to some degree, that the product inside has been made in a traditional still and only with natural flavors being distilled. This means there's no coloring added to the gin. I know it's a blue bottle, but the liquid inside is clear. So there's no coloring added to the gin. And that after distillation, that there's no artificial or no additional natural colors being added or products being added. And it also means that there's no sweetening permitted. So no sugar, there's no sweetening agents in here, no nothing. That's London Dry. And when we talk about no sugar and no sweetening, that's actually where the term dry comes in. We also use this term to describe wines as well, right? But with going back to gin, London itself was the epicenter of gin back in the 18th century. And as this dry style, right, non-sweet, dry style, as it was made there back in London, the name London Dry, or that term, was born and essentially has stuck since. Truthfully, folks, there are London Dry gins being made across the globe, even right here in Canada. Okay, so let's talk about the profile. Well, profile-wise, we typically find juniper notes to be very upfront in London Dry gins, with at least some fairly strong citrus tones. Now, the London Dry that I'm tasting today is 6 O'Clock Gin, made by Bramley & Gage of Bristol, UK. Now, Bramley & Gage, they're a husband and wife team that originally started making fruit-based liqueurs back in the 1980s, and then they got inspired. And the inspiration for this London Dry gin came from one of Bramley's great-grandfathers, who every night would sit down at 6 p.m. without fail, pour himself a gin and tonic, and then think about his day and about life around him. It doesn't sound too bad. May have to give that a try myself one of these days. Okay, so back to the gin and let's give this a taste, shall we? first we're going to go on the nose. We're going to bring it up 3 times just to get our nose acclimatized to the aromas. 1, 2, 3. Big inhale. So right away, medium intensity. And truthfully, with a bit softer juniper than I would have expected. I'm getting a little mushroom in here as well. Some herbs, some floral notes. I'm going to say orris root, and that's because I'm getting a dry, earthy note. Some soft lemon, some ripe Valencia orange, a little almond, and a little brioche. Okay, go in for a taste. We're going to swish it around, coat all of our 5 flavor receptors. Okay, so on the palate, again, soft juniper and piney notes. Getting some coriander, a little bit of anise or fennel coming through, orange citrus, elderflower, that orris root's coming back again, angelica, which, you know, that's a dry, woody kind of note. Very dry in the palate indeed. So, overall, it's good, fairly fresh, bright, but not one that I'd have on its own. It's fairly mild, so I would use it in cocktails, but use in the cocktails would have to be really thought out so that you don't drown out the aromas and flavors of the gin. How can you get it? Well, here in Ontario, $39.95 at the LCBO, stock number 13182. Worth a try at that price point. However, for me, there's more interesting London dries out there. But folks, taste is subjective, so don't be afraid to try this. Okay, so that's London Dry. Now, all this said and done, just quick note, different producers will use different botanicals. So London Dry gins can easily range from citrusy to savory and everything in between, right? But London Dry, they're going to all have that juniper right up front, and they're not going to be sweet. So just things to keep in mind. So next up now is our Plymouth Gin. So this style was at one time a protected geographic region, PGI region. Think wines. You know, when you see DOC on a bottle of wine, you know, that means it comes from a designated protected area, and that the production of the wine, or in this case the gin, has to meet with any growing, production, or ingredient regulations that may exist. So it used to be a PGI gin. It's no longer the case though, as currently there's only one producer left of Plymouth Gin out there, aptly called Plymouth Gin. Okay, so what makes, or what made, a gin a Plymouth Gin? Well, simply put, stylistically, the juniper notes are said to be softer, the botanicals are used are to be more earthy in notes, and there is a very slight sweet note that's present. Now, the British Navy loved this recipe so much that they not only used it exclusively for years and years and years, but they also commissioned a stronger, more boozy version. Hence the term Navy strength that you may have seen on some bottles. So just for context, this bottle is 41.2% alcohol by volume. The Navy strength that that the Brits commissioned, that's 57%. Not for me, but good for them. And as I mentioned in yesterday's welcome video, the British used this style, the Plymouth Gin style, to mix in with their anti-malaria daily quinine drink, giving rise to the gin and tonic. And, you know, I'm talking hundreds of years ago. All in about to fight malaria, and they gave rise to a cocktail. So, you know, very creative folks, those Navy members. Now, on the bottle itself, we'll see how well that comes through. There's an image of a Mayflower ship, and, you know, that falls in line with the whole Navy theme. And also at the bottom here is the words Coates and Co. of Plymouth, UK. Now, Coates and Co. is a nod to the former ownership group who started the recipe back in 1793 at a former Dominican friars monastery. So very interesting on that front, but today the brand is now owned by Pernod Ricard. But, you know, nice that they have the nod to the originators on the label. Okay, so Paul, all that's great and everything, but what does it smell and taste like? So let's dive in. On the aromas, it's light. You know, there's grassy notes, there's some heather notes, very mild juniper, followed by soft lemon and soft orange citrus. I'm picking up some savory herb, so sage is coming to mind. along with cardamom, some violet, some angelica root, and there's also a little bit of detectable sweetness on the nose. Okay, going for a taste. Coat those 5 flavor receptors. So the juniper here is a bit menthol-like, with the root botanicals kind of pushing through up front, right? The orris root and the angelica root, they're kind of coming through. Sage kind of battles along with those woodsy, earthy notes. And then now I'm getting some lemon and orange coming through at the back end. And that juniper, that soft mentholy juniper, just keeps coming. Overall, it's interesting. Well, definitely a little bit different. Again, though, for me, this would not be a sipper. Rather, I would just use it in cocktails, and probably ones that have a little bit of bitterness and strong citrus in them to kind of help balance it all out. How can you get it? In Ontario, $45.30 per 750 milliliter bottle. Stock number 277004 at the LCBO. At this price point, though, we're starting to get up there. You may want to try it either on its own first or in a cocktail first before making a $45, $46 investment in a full bottle. So folks, there you have it. 2 examples of different traditional gin styles that are out there. Now tomorrow, the 3rd day of June, I'll be talking about Old Tom and slow gin styles. And then on Friday, the 4th day of June, I'll share some cocktail ideas using all 4 of these different styles and different brands. I want to thank you all for tuning in. Lots more great stuff to come, so keep on following. Don't forget, share my posts. Get that hashtag #SipWithSomForAll trending. We need to get the good word on gin out there. Life is way too short to drink boring gin. Until tomorrow, stay safe everyone, stay well, and cheers from Som for All.